25 degrees Celsius here in Abuja, the Federal Capital Territory. Good morning and welcome to your daily dose of sunshine, Sunrise Daily. I'm Maupe Ogun Yusuf.
And I'm Ayo Makine. It's 28 degrees here in Lagos, and today is June 10, 2 days away from that day. Yeah, for those of you who know. Welcome to the show.
Indeed, Ayo, we are counting down to Democracy Day, and as we all know, it's now a public holiday. One more public holiday for us to miss, Ayo, you and I. But while we're counting down to the public holiday, while many Nigerians are counting down to the public holiday, another day to, stay at home, I guess a lot of Nigerians will be, really thinking long and hard about our democracy, the state of our democracy, where we currently are as a country, and it is something that should invite sober reflection. We do know that the federal government has been out now trying to defend its own record, especially the administration of Bola Ahmed Tinubu. Yesterday, we saw the SGF of the Federation alongside the Minister of Information and a host of other ministers, giving their own scorecard of how they have performed. But while we'll focus on that on this program, especially as we look to the sort of democracy that we want and the fight for this current Fourth Republic, the Senate had something else up their sleeves yesterday. They turned their attention to the textile industry, because we do know that in this country, for decades, the hum of textile machines was the soundtrack of our industrialization. From Kaduna to Kano, from Funtua to Lagos, textile factories powered local economies, clothed a nation, and provided livelihoods for hundreds of thousands of families. You understand, about 500,000 families at the minimum. But today, many of those factories stand silent, casualties of smuggling, rising production costs, policy inconsistency, and fierce global competition. Now, the Nigerian Senate is calling for a dramatic intervention, a ban on textile imports, and renewed support for local manufacturers in what many see as an ambitious attempt to bring one of Nigeria's most iconic industries back to life. Now, can a sector that once symbolized Nigeria's industrial promise be revived, where protection of local industries create jobs and stimulate economic growth, or will it lead to higher prices and unintended consequences for consumers? Ayo, these are some of the questions that went through my head when I saw the Senate have this debate yesterday. Aren't we too far gone to now start this policy now with a total ban?
I think a good place to begin, Malkwe, would be to know where are we coming from as a people. Nigeria's textile industry was once one of the largest industrial employers in West Africa. At its peak, between the 70s and the 80s, it had roughly 120 to 180 mills spread across Kano, Kaduna, Lagos, Aba, parts of the north, some about 7 to 10 states at the time. It directly employed about more than 250,000 people, with some estimates placing total livelihood impact above 500,000 when you include cotton, farming, and distribution. And of course, that's then. I mean, talk about now. When we are looking at the entire value chain, we are looking at quite a lot of things, Malkwe. So when the Senate is calling for a ban on imported textiles, I don't think it's starting a new debate. I think they're just trying to revive an old economic architecture that once reduced import dependence and conserved foreign exchange. Remember back then, Malkwe, Nigeria's finance commissioner or minister at the time, he was famous for Nigerian textiles, for his own, textile, the one that his own clothes from his own people, the very long tail that he used to wear at the time. I really wish we could bring those days back. But the collapse of that industry was not caused by imports alone. It was driven by rising production costs, weak power supply, outdated machinery, policy inconsistency, which you mentioned, and eventually global competition that local manufacturers, local factories could not match. Of course, you would also remember that a good number of times we've heard the former president of the AFDB and a good number of people now still telling us that as far as they are concerned, it is cheaper to import stuff into Nigeria than it is to create. So that tension is important to look at. Protection sounds like revival, but without fixing competitiveness, it risks becoming a policy of scarcity rather than production. So the real question mark is not whether Nigeria should block imports. It is whether Nigeria has rebuilt the capacity that once made domestic production viable at scale. Because without that, we're not just reviving an industry, we're only repeating its history under worse conditions. Those are my thoughts, Malpe.
Indeed, Ayo. Well, we did say that the conversation, is dovetailing into our democracy this morning, and we'll be having that conversation when we come back from this break. Please stay with us.
Thank you for staying with us. As we mentioned earlier, Friday is June 12th. It's a public holiday. And yes, Makwe, thank you for rubbing it in that it's not a public holiday for you and I. Anyway, it is now celebrated as Nigeria's Democracy Day. Many conversations will rightly focus on the annulment of the 1993 presidential election, the struggle that followed, and the sacrifices made by countless Nigerians in the pursuit of democratic rule. But before the annulment, there was an election that many observers still regard as one of the freest, fairest, and most widely accepted in our nation's history. An election that, for a brief but remarkable moment, transcended the familiar divides of ethnicity, religion, region, and political interests, which are now prevalent today. Perhaps that is the part of the June 12th story we do not celebrate enough. Long before it became a symbol of resistance, June 12 was a demonstration of democratic maturity by Nigerians. It was evidence that Nigerians could rally around a process they trusted and a result they considered credible. More than 3 decades, 33 to be exact, more than 3 decades after, questions are still being raised. What exactly did Nigerians get right in 1993? Have we preserved the spirit that made June 12 possible? How healthy is our democracy today? And what must happen for Nigerians to once again have deep confidence in the electoral process? To help us examine these questions, we are joined by Mr. Olawale Okuni, who is head of the National Secretariat of the Movement for Credible Elections. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you. It is my pleasure to be with you.
Many times when we talk about democracy and we talk about June 12, we talk about the election. But there is that part, and I'd like you to begin from there, as mentioned earlier. We don't talk about the fact that we had an election that was devoid of any sentiment whatsoever. No political sentiments, no religious sentiments, no ethnic sentiments, no regional sentiments. People just went out to vote their choices. What does that remind you of? What would you say, is a gain for us in that?
Well, implication, well, thank you for bringing me to come and explain this. For me, the implication of that is that the umpire, the NEC at that time, under Ofrimosu, was determined to have a free, fair, and credible election, irrespective of the intention, well, whether good or bad or negative, of the government at that time. They were largely independent in their devices. Humphrey Nwosu knowing fully well that I was also dealing with a Maradona at that time, also was Maradonic in the positive manner. Very loquacious, and talk very well. And so they have their device to make sure that that election was. So they designed an election that is impossible to rig or to circumvent in any way. So that was what happened. And the implication is that the umpire, the moment the umpire, neck or whatever, compromises, the election is gone. And the political class, we always want to play, selfish. Whoever is there, and that's why we have said that you don't need the incumbent to supervise an election. Babangida seemed at that time to be living, to be existing. But in actual fact, he wanted us to stay. But in our case now, you have the incumbent supervising his own election with humongous and gargantuan state paraphernalia. Under that circumstances, how do you want him to commit suicide, political suicide?
Okay, so let's stay with the memory of this particular 1993 election.
Yes, sir.
And perhaps the lessons that we can learn from it. There are those who would listen to you now and say, well, Professor Humphrey Nwosu was appointed by the same person.
Oh, yes.
The head of state. So the president, the head of state at the time, could have chosen someone else. But he chose Professor Nwosu. Isn't that in itself a determination on the part of the government of the day that, look, we want to do the right thing?
Not necessarily. Professor Nwosu had a profile that would gel or that gelled with Nigerians. Babangida wanted the best everywhere. Professor Wole Soyinka, Taisho Larin, People's Bank, Oyo Sam, Oyo Bare, all kinds of areas. He was getting the best into the Humphrey Nwosu. You have all of them by Babangida assembled. Top notch. Brilliant. Excellent people. So there was a profile because he wanted again to create an impression that, look, this cannot be against the people. These are people of integrity. These are people who are very formidable in their profession. And so that, again, gave a high rating to Babangida's government. And if you look at Babangida's government, really, I did a comparative analysis of constitutional exploration of Nigeria since 1886 to 2024. And I saw that the most robust governance was under Babangida. I saw clearly, all of the, from People's Bank to MAMSA to DFRI to the political commission, political debate, zero election, all of that was ideal situation. But then, the intention of man cannot be verified until you see,
Okay. I get you. There are many questions to ask about that, but I would still like us to talk about the people, because we ignore them a lot in this particular conversation. That demonstration of the people coming out, irrespective of emotions and sentiments, it doesn't get enough. It doesn't get its pride of place. It doesn't get enough mention. It doesn't get the credence that the people made the sacrifice of coming out to vote. It doesn't get the mention that we did something right, that Nigerians decided that we are holding this particular position because this is the position that we believe in. It doesn't seem to get mentioned these days. And perhaps as a result of that, that practice isn't happening any longer. What's the relevance of that to you, and how do you think we can bring that back?
Yes, the people were determined by our own mobilization at that, I remember campaign for democracy, etc. There was a major political mobilization against the military from 1989, when you had the consultative forum, the National Consultative Forum, led by Alawa Kabashon. Nigerian people, Nigerian citizens wanted the military out because military is government by force of arms. And so they are a decree run by decree, not constitution. Therefore, the people growingly, bought into our mobilization that it is an anomaly for the military to run. And so that momentum by itself brought about or foisted the determination on the people to want the military. So in whatever way, the people came out to say, look, we just want the military out. And that was what, necessitated the kind of credibility you had with that election, because the people on their own, by the effort of groups like Campaign for Democracy, etc., the people were mobilized to say we must host the military.
Okay.
And so that in itself.
There are those who have also pointed to the voting system, the voting pattern of the day, the option A4. And it would seem like that's being kind of adopted now in the Electoral Act, where it's either you go consensus or you do direct primaries. And at that direct primaries, I mean, we have also seen the way it has played out, at the different political parties, this thing. So the question now is, we had credibility at the time because of the campaign that you talked about and the system that the people, the electoral umpire of the day adopted, and the fact that the people themselves wanted to be a part of it. I don't recall ballot box snatching or any of those things being rife at the time. People seemed to just comply. And you also talked about trust, the fact that people trusted the process. Where is all that trust gone?
It's gone because a lot of bastardization, there is a lot of do or die politics. There is a lot of decadence in our polity, particularly as demonstrated by our political class, the leadership. And so you cannot have that again. Because in any case, today, you have an INEC that is not trusted by Nigerians.
The question is why?
With what they have seen INEC done, in Nigeria. For instance, you have INEC imposing guidelines and procedure that seem to be against opposition political parties. And then you see all sorts of judicial intervention that appears to you that somebody is remote controlling the judiciary. So all of that will build distrust and mistrust. And then the people themselves, you see apathy, because people know that they just feel that the election is already done. And so vote won't count. The only thriving business in the country is politics. You find politics reduced to money bags and highest bidder. Politics, which we call in political science, prepender politics. And if you go on AI to go and check today, you will see AI says that prependalism is akin to Nigerian politics. I was shocked and embarrassed when somebody read that. I think it was Dr. Bugaji who was reading that at the level of the movement for credible election. So that is what we are reduced to: money, no principle. If you, with all your service to China, or even Professor Wale Soyinka with all his, you know, very big profile, decide to run in any of these political parties today, you will lose because you won't want to share money, you want to buy vote, you won't want to play the kind of dirty. So there is no principle. There is no political party.
Look, just a second, because there are a number of issues to raise with you. One of the things that you said earlier was that the advocacy was heavy.
Yeah. But it was the push from the campaign for democracy,
even
democracy.
In the post 1993 post June 12 elections campaign, it was intense.
Yes, that was
lasted
a whole struggle.
about 6 years.
Yes, the whole struggle
before this whole thing now came to be. There are those who would also point to the fact that that's also all gone. Hardly do we have the quantum of debates that we had then. Now, everyone, the kind of mobilization that the civil society organizations did at the time, that's also all gone. So it would seem like we are reduced to what we have simply because we didn't do the things that we were supposed to do or that we did at the time.
Deliberately, the political class continued to pauperize and impoverish Nigerian people.
There are those who would also point to you that, and I think it was SAN, that said that those of them who fought for the emancipation, well, let's use that term in this context, return to democracy, they were told by whoever it was that they shouldn't participate in the political struggle, in the Fourth Republic elections and all of that. And consequently, those of you who fought didn't get into the saddle for whatever reason. And now, there are those who would say, how come you are complaining now when you could have been a part of the process to make sure that things don't go awry?
Yeah, two issues here. The first is to deal with the question of the activists at that time not participating in democracy. It was correct to a large extent because General Abdulsalami Abubakar, who took over the reins of government militarily himself, was not ready to give a constitution upon which we run democracy. It was in a hurry to leave. And so they gave another decree in what we are using today to us. And the leadership of the movement under Chief Tony Enauro of blessed memory, and even Ganifa Emi here, said it will be an aberration for us to go into a transition that will not have a constitution of the Nigerian people. A constitution is not a law. A constitution is the ground norm, total agreement of Nigerian people of how we want to run that democracy. You must first start that. They were correct in any case. But again, the other group, we were divided into two. The other group, led by people like Comrade Olaoni and Dinade, which are all of them, said you must participate because nature abhors vacuum. And that if you don't, it will be difficult for you to recalibrate and get back power. So that was what happened at that time. So it was an argument at the level of Joint Action Committee of Nigeria, JACON, at that time, was coordinated by Chief Gando, Chief Abraham Adesoya, Ayuade Banjo, Bokna, all of them were present in Ganifa Emi chambers. But that was where the division occurred in 1998, that should we participate as people who have eroded this democracy, or who have chased out Abacha or whatever, should we participate or not? So we were divided. But it's neither here nor there. Today you have mentioned the issue of there is no real formidable, opposition to the rot that we are seeing. People are not talking, yes, because the Nigerian political deliberately impoverish the people, mismanage the economy, and then the people become powerless. Okay. And what happened is this: if you must fight for democracy, you must also be strong enough.
Okay.
And therefore, that affects the kind of intervention. But nevertheless, you have a group like MC, Movement for Credible Election, which has become an umbrella to say enough is enough.
Okay.
2027, we must make it credible. And everything must be done. There must be a nationwide mobilization.
There are several questions about that. We'll come to that in a bit. There are several questions about it, but I think Marco also has some questions for you. Go ahead, Marco.
Thank you very much, Ayo. Well, Mr. Kuni, it's good to see you, and I know that I don't know how you feel about the fact that at least one of the things which was agitated for is the fact that June 12 should be made our Democracy Day. That has since been achieved. It is now a day where we commemorate what transpired on June 12, and we recognize that it had a great role to play in achieving the Fourth Republic. However, there'll be questions as to what significance would you really want this day to hold? Would you want it to be a day of sober reflection in terms of how far we've come with our democracy, or a day to look ahead to say what exactly is possible with a democracy, which was something that a lot of people really clamored for? Do you really think that it is the most viable form of government for a country as diverse as Nigeria?
Thank you, Maokwe. You said it all. I think that we must give it to government for making June 12 a democracy day. But it's supposed to be, and I don't think that is occurring, it's supposed to be a day for sober reflection where we come to review everything about democracy and see how we can consolidate on the past of democratic activities. It should be a day where those who matter, not just anybody, those who have paid the price for democracy will be honored, will be remembered, and some also can be appreciated for their sacrifices. A day where you can look at the MKO Abiola family and then say, what can we do, to compensate the family for the losses. One, Kudirat Abiola, then MKO Abiola, for our democracy, because they fought against military rule. They were defiant. They were resistant to that. And so they sacrificed their lives for us to have it. So it's a day for us to say, look, what is the right kind of things to do? And who are the right people to lead us? A day to reset the country, to say, look, how can democracy thrive? What foundation, what template, constitution can we, for instance, leaders of the country or leaders of the patriots, leaders of our people have been saying, let us restructure this country constitutionally. Let us restructure the architecture of politics. And that is a day for us to converge. If it is just a one-day conference with the president sitting, you invite those who understand what democracy is, understand or appreciate by their contribution, and then what a constitution is. Because, for instance, the constitution that we have today, it is not democratic. And you want to build democracy on it, you will never get democracy. That is the flaw of the Nigerian state. Because that constitution was imposed as a law, Decree 24 of 1999. And if the foundation, according to the Bible, is faulty, what can the righteous do? All the righteousness of economic reform we are doing will never work. And we told the president that when the patriot visited him in Aso Villa. There will never be any economic that will have impact on the Nigeria, because the foundation upon which the country is seated is flawed. And we have seen that there is no way, if there is no agreement of the people on how they want to run their life, and they have this imposition that National Assembly continue to doctor every time and so to serve the political class, we are going nowhere. Therefore, it should be a day where we do real sober, solemn reflection on the past and the future of Nigeria. And then we come out with some resolution to say, look, 1, 2, 3 resolution. We need to do ABC. But unfortunately, people who got to government didn't get there by democracy in any case. They got there through their money and through the force. And therefore, they were careless about democracy. Because what we have today is, it cannot be, it is not, and it will never be, because the foundation of it is Decree number 24 of 1999. So we need to come together on that day. Not selective, not just bring balloon politician into Abuja and then begin to, you know, masturbate politically. No, you bring the right set of people with principle, people who have fought for people. I mean, you can check. The president himself can check, and then we become one and reflect, irrespective of partisanship. There shouldn't be partisanship in building our democracy, because today you have very huge, frightening, heightening insecurity, and you will continue to have it. Prayer will not solve it for you. Prayer.
Do you think?
You can, if you like, pray from now till whatever. It will not. You have to do the right thing. God has given you wisdom to know the faulty foundation, and God has said, if your foundation be destroyed or faulty, there is no righteousness.
It's a very difficult place to be, because especially when you keep saying we can never have unless
we can. I'm saying authoritatively, we can never have, except to do the right thing. You will never have. It's not by prayer.
There are those who disagree with you. There are those who say, there are those who disagree with you. I think it's very important to state that there are those who disagree with that school of thought, that unless we revisit the Constitution, they believe that this Constitution is a reflection of a Constitution that was done in 1979, and that is just a rehash, which Nigerians agreed upon in 1979, and that it was just, will I say, touched up. Another group of Nigerians sat on it, and you know, that was given to us as a decree. After all, it was even a Nigerian who gave it to us as a decree, and that is the will I say, the insincerity of the political class to abide by even what this Constitution says that has put us where we are. But I mean, just to put it out there that there's two schools of thought on this issue of the Constitution. Why you are calling for a new Constitution? Why you believe, and the Patriots, I mean, they have been very clear on their demands, and they're very clear on the path forward. Do you think that we're really in a place, or don't you think that our unity is in such a place that it is too fragile for us to undertake such an exercise?
Never. Rather, it will strengthen our unity if we can come together as a people, represented variously, come together and discuss and debate and take it as a continuous thing. That will strengthen, because it will foster agreement. And when there is agreement, there is unity. But on this Constitution, there was even no ownership of the Nigerian people, no agreement, nothing. It was foisted. And the process of constitution making, you see, by itself has its own spirit that drives unity. Because the moment you participate in a process, a discussion, a conference, and then there's even where you disagree as minority, you know that, oh, I was part of this. So this, the 1979 Constitution, for instance, that you mentioned, did it work for Nigeria? It did it because the military at that time was the SMC under General Basanjo at that time. Also doctored it. You don't doctor a constitution from a constituent assembly. I am an authority on the question of constitution making. a constitution flows from a constituent assembly, so elected by the peoples of the country. And when agreement is reached by the peoples, the representative of the peoples, it is proclaimed. It is never decreed. It is proclaimed by that constituent assembly. It doesn't go to government. The moment it goes to government, it becomes law. Because government, either military or democratic, doesn't have the right to give the sovereign constitution. You cannot give the sovereign constitution. The sovereign we elect for the purpose of constitution making, and they proclaim it and say this is what we have agreed. But the moment you now take it back to government and the president begin to assent, you turn it, you reduce it back to mere law. And that is why the 1999 constitution is a law, it's not a constitution. There is a difference between a constitution and a law. The constitution is the ground norm, the totality of the agreement of the people. And then if they make mistake, or there is an error, the people make mistake, so be it. They agree that, look, we make that genuine mistake.
Okay. Well, I guess, the days are coming when, this conversation, will come to a head. Thankfully, when the Patriots visited the president, it's not like
government has to listen now.
It's not like
government has to listen.
The president wasn't against it. It was just saying, just to get our priorities right. But thank you so much for your time.
What is our priority?
Well, it's a matter for another day. We'll take that on some other time.
Foundation of
Olawale Okuni is head of the National Secretariat Movement for Credible Elections.
Want to be the economy on the
Thank you again for your time this morning.
It's my pleasure to be here.
We'll be right back after this timeout.
Well, speaking of our democracy, we do know that Nigeria is heading to the polls to the general elections come 2027. And all of the political parties have now conducted their primaries and are dealing with the post-primaries fallout. Well, INEC has now issued a deadline for the submission of the list of candidates, and also saying when it will give the political parties the code to be able to upload the names of their candidates to its portal. Well, they've set June the 26th, that's just the end of this month, as a deadline for the submission of the names of candidates, and July 11 as when they're going to give them the codes for them to be able to upload the names of their candidates on the portal of INEC. But there are big questions, because even as we speak right now, a lot of political parties are reluctant to submit or to publish the names of the candidates as has been, as they have conducted their primaries. I mean, they have conducted the primaries within their political parties. Okay, publish either the results or publish the names of the candidates so the public can see. They're like, no, that's not a requirement. The requirement is for us to submit the list to INEC. So, I don't know, as I'm looking at this situation, only one song is playing through my head, and that's the song Wahala Day by P-Square. We will see how they navigate this particular matter. But to talk about it, because we cannot talk about democracy, really, without talking about political parties and the role that they play. And if they're not getting their own internal democratic processes right, there are big questions as to what exactly they're offering us in the larger polity. Majid Dahiru joins us now. He's a technical member of the Lokstera Leadership Foundation. Thank you so much for speaking with us.
Thank you very much for having me.
I'm sure you must be looking at this issue as I am looking at it. I mean, the other day we had a conversation with one of the chieftains of the ADC, Mr. Kenneth Okonkwo, and then it resulted in somebody else coming to say, well, what I said was not what he said, and now he said, she said, we're seeing a lawsuit being slammed on Mr. Kenneth Okonkwo for what he said about another political party and the presidential candidate of that political party. But these are some of the things we're looking at. First, we're not very sure as to, no, we're not sure. There is actually no general opposition consensus. That is on the one hand. then within the political parties themselves, there have been big questions thrown up as to how they have conducted their primaries. There's plenty of dissatisfaction if you look at the APC, if you look at the ADC, if you look at the NDC. I didn't mention PDP for a reason because it's unclear, whether they are going to be fielding candidates in this 2027, yes. You know. But most of the political parties look really uncertain in terms of the candidates that they're fielding for the 2027 general elections. What are your immediate thoughts on it?
Honestly, it's very disturbing. I mean, this is a new law in our constitutional democracy.
A new law?
A new law, really. Because this is the first time we are having a situation where primaries are held, and many weeks after, no single political party has been able to publish the list of the successful candidates. After, of course, exhausting the internal processes to address grievances. Normally, you have a panel that conducts a primary election, you have an appeals panel. All of these are expected to be exhausted within a week or two, and the list of candidates will be published. And once that is done, the next thing is now to upload the candidates to the INEC portal as the duly elected candidates of the party. But unfortunately, we are seeing something quite novel, and negatively so, in this dispensation. And sadly, the ruling party, the APC, appears to have led in that direction. It appears to have led by that not so good example in that direction. So there's a contagion effect across board. So the NDC, the ADC, even the fragments of the PDP are also following suit. There's no single political party
that has published their list of candidates.
Absolutely none. So that is the quarrel you see within the NDC that has nosedived into the conversation between Mr. Kenneth Okonkwo and my good friend Ohebu, which has resulted into a lawsuit. So, and this is quite disturbing. The APC, for instance, for me, the president should be, very worried about this situation, because if, as the leader of the party, it is the leadership of the party now, maybe the chairman of the party and other executive of the party, that are trying to withhold, for whatever reason, the release of duly elected candidates. As the leader of the party, as somebody who you can say any other thing about, I mean, you can criticize his economic policies, you can criticize his administrative procedures, but there's one thing that Mr. Tinubu brings on board at all times, and it is the fact that he's an accomplished Democrat, who was one of those who fought for this democracy, who also fought to keep it alive in the opposition. I mean, we are going to celebrate Democracy Day, June 12th. Bola Tinubu is an integral part. It's like it's part of the trilogy of June 12th, if you like. And so, one would have expected that if there is any legacy he must protect, above all of that, it is that democratic credential that he possesses. And so one is wondering why he's not able to compel his party to simply follow his own rules. You set up a party to conduct primaries across board. Follow your own rules, release the results, and follow the procedure. So what he has failed to do now has now created a contagion effect across board. So if this abnormality becomes normalized going forward, it will be attributed to his leadership failure.
Yeah, but let's interrogate that legacy which you say he holds. Because some people will say they will disagree vehemently with you when you talk about his democratic credentials. Perhaps pre-1999. Okay, perhaps also the fact that he was able to hold his own against the ruling party.
Yes.
However, even within the opposition, especially in Lagos, where he held sway, or where he still holds sway, there are big questions as to those democratic credentials. In Lagos, there is a saying when they say Baba Sokwe, it means, that usually imposition was the way of life within the political party which was dominant in Lagos at the time, the APC. And it's just a reflection that which was dominant in terms of how candidates emerged is what we're now saying play out on the larger scene at the national level, and this is what we're getting. This is the results we're getting.
No, despite his leadership of the dominant party in Lagos, there was never a time in the history of the Fourth Republic that primaries were conducted in Lagos, and we didn't know the candidates for the elections, many weeks after, despite his overbearing influence, if you like. But at least they still try to subject whatever intention they have towards training candidates through some level of compliance with internal rules of the party. We don't expect them to have 100% because we know some of the limitations of our political parties. I've always said that that's the weakest link in our democracy value chain. But this is an all-time low. And it has contaminated all the other political parties. That's why I'm more than a Nigerian. And I'm saying, this shouldn't be coming from a Bola Tinubu, for instance, whom we all know that whatever you want to say about him, you may not carry him with a lot of other good things, but at least it has a legacy he must uphold. It is this one. And the danger here is that if this becomes a norm, our democracy would have suffered a serious derailing. Because we don't know how those that will succeed this set of leaders will misuse this antecedent going forward. So for all intents and purposes, INEC is advertising on how to vote during election day. We Nigerians don't know who we are going to vote for. And it will be suicidal for the party, or any party at all, to upload candidates straight to INEC without releasing the results first. You know why I'm saying this? First, for the ruling party. Bola Tinubu is going to stand a chance to win the next election, not because of his performance in office, absolutely not, but because of the carefully woven consensus he's been able to build across the country, which has seen other parties practically collapse into the APC. And there are agreements, there are codes of conduct, some written, some unspoken, some not quite visible, that is guiding this consensus and broad alliance. Any violation of this alliance might signal internal dissent that might lead into mass protest vote against the party. You see, the APC must not go to bed thinking that all is Uhuru. No. The only thing that can make this party go to this next election successfully is to hold on to this armada of alliances that's built. And if there is any interference from above over the local primaries that have been held across boards, it might not signal a positive direction for the party. Not for the opposition. You are trying to take power from the ruling party, so the NDC, the ADC, and others. And you are not even conducting your affairs differently from how the ruling party has conducted its own. So Nigerians should be left with no choice than to say, well, even at the level of primary elections and management of your internal processes, we do not see a difference between you and the ruling party. So apathy might set in. That will also be to the advantage of the ruling party. So this whole arrangement really does not pay anybody. The political parties that are doing this right now, it does not really serve their interests as being viable going to the next election.
What is the risk that you see on the long run? Because, many times we're short-sighted. We're only looking at the next elections. And most times that's how political parties look, the next elections. Are we going to emerge victorious or not? But on the whole, there are implications for our larger democratic polity. What are some of them that you see?
It means our democracy would have been permanently arrested by a few cliques of party leaders at the very top of the parties. For example, you look at party chairmen and so-called national leaders. It means our democracy would have been arrested by these few people to the detriment of the majority. So popular participation in democracy would have suffered stillbirth in Nigeria after 27 years of democracy. It means, in effect, our democracy has been completely overturned. What we now have is civilian dictatorship going forward, which means there will be no accountability in governance, there will be no accountability in public administration, and things will definitely get up because absolute power corrupts absolutely. This is something that must not be allowed to happen. People are not paying attention to what's happening across political party lines. Again, this is the very first time that primaries are conducted, and results are being delayed by the national headquarters of each of these political parties, led by the APC. So I'm saying, to break this current conundrum, and to save what was left of our democracy, and to reposition these parties to be competitive, the APC must take the lead. And I'm calling on the president to direct his own party to show a better example now on how to conduct at least the internal affairs. Because it seems like what they have done in the APC is having a contagion effect on other political parties, which a larger implication that our democracy right now is gradually becoming imperiled.
I don't know if it's too late. I'm just, very curious as to whether this can be reversed. Because when you think about it, democracy being stunted. But let me quickly see if Ayo, did you want to say something?
Well, just one question, Mark, where most of the time when we talk about these structures, infrastructure, soft infrastructure largely, Mr. Dahiru, it would seem like we ignore the people. People are always at the end of the food chain, never at the beginning or never even in the middle of it. You're talking about the internal party democracy, and next year is election year. This is the electioneering period, and candidates are being selected. People have no idea, a good number of them have no idea who their councillor is going to be, who their local government chairman, even their House of Assembly or National Assembly member is going to be. Do you see a need for some kind of adjustment or arrangement to that, so that people don't wait until the end, but they can actually have an idea of who each of the political parties are presenting, particularly in their communities?
Well, for me, one thing that we must now advocate for is to amend the Electoral Act. To now allow political parties to choose the mode of primary election that suits its own peculiarity. You know, this forceful attempt to make political parties to go through the direct primary election has created this particular problem now that we are facing. So I think in the interest of those, even the political class, those that are in the National Assembly and the governors, all of them that are participants in the political activities in the country must now realize that that electoral act must be amended now to include all forms of primary elections and give the political parties the liberty to do so. Clearly, this direct mode of primary election has failed, has been abused, has been thoroughly misused, and has not served the purpose of members of the party that trooped out across the country to vote only for the top hierarchy of the party to hold the results hostage. And so I think we need to look at the framework that now guides election in Nigeria going forward. Yeah, for me, it was a fatal error to have imposed just one mode of primary on political parties. The parties, I think, can actually do better with indirect primary election through delegate system without this chaos we faced, across board. So otherwise, I just think that the political parties themselves should, in their own self-enlightened interest, begin to do the needful, begin to do the right thing. Now, I've called on the APC as the leading party in the country and the president to lead his own party towards the right direction. It is not the same call we're going to have to make on the opposition leaders too. As we speak, we're not even certain of the presidential candidates of these political parties, because the party have not even published the names of the presidential candidates. The party have not published the names of their running mates to the running mates of the presidential candidates.
Yeah, some people say we know the presidential candidates. It's the running mates we're not very
It's not been published even by the party, including the president himself. It's an anomaly. It's not normal at all. And like I said, this must not be allowed to upset certain arrangements within their own party that I know can give them some advantages going to the next election.
Well, we'll see how that eventually pans out. I hope that, the people listening and were taking heed as to how this has long-term implications for our democracy, especially as we approach Democracy Day come Friday. Majid Dahiru, we have to thank you very much for coming on the program. He's a technical member of the Lux Terra Leadership Foundation and has been speaking with us here in our Abuja studios. Well, that's where we draw the curtains on today's edition of Sunrise Daily. Thank you so much for being a part of it. I'm Maofe Ogun Yusuf.
And I'm Ayo Akire. At the top of the hour is business news. Have a wonderful rest of your day.